This is the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to St. John. Glory to you, Lord Christ. Jesus said to his disciples, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. Now you have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit. Because apart from me, you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. That is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. So for our meditation this morning, please, both feet on the floor, spine erect, back is unsupported. Get right out there on the edge of the pew. And let's come first with the hands resting in a comfortable position in your lap. Let's come first into an awareness of the breath. And if you've been like me, you've been going pretty hard all week. Let's just slow it all down. Just observing the breath come and go. Lengthen it out, slow it down, and quite naturally the mind will begin to quiet. And we'll introduce our verse this morning with the ears of your faith, hearing Jesus say, I am the true vine, as you inhale, and as you exhale, you are the branches. Inhale, I am the true vine. Exhale, you are the branches. True vine, branches. Returning again just to the observation of the breath, watching the breath come and go, being aware of the belly expanding, and contracting as you breathe. And we'll finish our practice of meditation this morning by filling our hearts with gratitude. Just grateful that we can slow down and experience the peace of Christ. Very nice. So I'd like to do a little time travel this morning right off the bat. Let's go back to 1970. How old were you? 1970, I was 21. 1970, how old were you? 1970, how old were you? What were you doing? Where were you? 1970, what were you doing? Where were you at? People were at, where were you at? 1970. I was a sophomore in college, Hobart College, Finger Lakes District of New York State. Where were you? What were you doing? Where were you at? And let's bring the focus a little more clearly to spring of 1970, specifically April. No, I'm not sure if it was before or after Easter. I'm not sure. In 1970, I knew when Easter was. 1970, April 1970. And I'm not sure what you were paying attention to in April of 1970, but it was a matter really of very little consequence. I mean, we'd already been to the moon. There had been 3 or 4 landings. So when Apollo 13 took off, it really was no big deal, just another moon shot. But, they took off on April 11th, and they didn't get very much more than about 2 days into it, and the oxygen tank exploded on the command module. And I remember thinking, that can't be good. Those boys, there were 3 of them. You remember, of course, Jim Lovell, and not too many, as many remember Jack Schweigert or Fred Hayes, but there were 3 of them. And they all had very specific assignments, but they're out there, they're out there. They're 2 days out there. And the oxygen tank explodes because there was an exposed wire. And initially they had no idea what the implications of it were. But the one thing for sure is it got everybody's attention. And wasn't very long after that, the Pope held a mass specifically for 10,000 people at the Basilica in St. Peter's to pray for the astronauts. There was a larger gathering of over 100,000 Buddhists or Hindus in India at a religious festival, and they turned their prayer to the astronauts. And so it wasn't very much more than a couple of days of it that you and I, and you probably remember where you were and what television set you were watching and who you were with, when everybody was focused on these 3 human beings out in the middle of space with a command module that had just exploded. So people were curious. Now, it would have taken too much energy to turn the module around and bring it home right away. So it had to stay on its trajectory and loop the moon, go around the other side of the moon to catch the gravity. I don't know how the rocket science works. I'm a theologian, but anyway, they had to go around the moon. And everybody knew that when they went around the far side of the moon, that there would be no radio contact. They knew that, and it would last for relatively 25 minutes. And by this time, they were already in dire straits. I mean, Fred Hayes had a urinary tract infection that was extremely painful. None of them had slept. They're 4 days into it. The conditions, they all had to climb. The lunar module was designed for 2 people. They all had to go to it because there wasn't enough energy in the big one to maintain life. So these 3 guys are cramped. There was no real air conditioning. They were freezing cold, without sleep, didn't have adequate water. Everything was pared way back. And here they are. Now they've looped the moon and they're coming back. And of course, all of a sudden, 40 million Americans and billions across the world are watching every moment. And we all became rocket scientists. They told us exactly what was going on, what the damage had been, what the assessment were, and what the calculations were about their chances of coming back home. Diminishing by the minute. So the entire planet really was on edge. And the biggest trauma in any space flight is the reentry. And the heat and the technology. You'd have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. So here they are, and they're coming back in, and there was some question about the trajectory, but they had to risk a little bit, no matter what. And so they go into this reentry, and then all of a sudden, radio contact was lost. And it lasted for 87 seconds. Do you remember? Nobody knew if they were alive. Everybody knew going in that it was extremely touch and go. And for 87 seconds, the entire planet held its breath. And finally, the first words from Fred Hayes. Okay, Joe. And they were back. Connection. Connection. Without connection, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's funny. Connie, who was doing the altar guild setup, came into the church this morning and threw a camera in the sanctuary. Oh, we're connected. We're connected. I was coming out of the gymnasium the other day where I work out, and I ran into a fellow who's a longtime friend, and he was a very, very dedicated member of a church, little church that I used to go to way down south. And I said, "Hey, man, how are you doing?" I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I said, "Are you enjoying the Zoom? And have you been up on Zoom with the church and all that?" Nah, not too much. When we first started, I tried a couple times, but it's not for me. It's not for me. And he said, as a matter of fact, I've lost connection. I've lost connection. And another thing that happened, I'm watching the weather last night, and on KTVU from the Bay Area, Channel 2. I'm up there watching the weather, and there's a commercial for KTVU. And it's about how you can access news 24 hours a day on their website, podcasts, all kind of social media. And the banner over the top of the commercial was "Stay connected, stay connected." And you lose internet. I mean, this technology. This could fail anytime, and we know that. You got a good connection? No, I don't have a good connection. Well, you need more. How's my broadband? You're connected. Have you ever tried to get in touch with somebody you really wanted to get in touch with, either to get information or to give information, and they don't pick up? They don't pick up. There's no connection. Or you're on the phone with somebody. I hate this when they're on the road or something, and it's a bad connection. What? What are you? You're going in? Power of being connected. The human need that we have to be connected. Jesus said, "I'm the true vine, you're the branches. Hang out. Stay connected. Stay connected. Stay connected. Abide. Stay connected." And you got to remember now the context. Where are they at? It's in the 15th chapter. We're not just getting this show on the road. It's about to come to a crashing halt. And he's with his disciples. They've said, he sang the last hymn, but there's a little addendum to the farewell address. And Jesus says, "I am the true vine. I'm the true vine." It's a rich imagery, not lost on us here amidst all these grapevines. It's funny. In evangelical circles, people have what they call a life verse. We don't hear much about that in the Episcopal Church. As a matter of fact, I really never heard it until after I got into conversations with evangelicals, and they would ask me, "What's your life verse?" And a life verse, as you might imagine, is just an important verse from the Bible that, for whatever reason, means a great deal to you. And for whatever, it's a verse that you come back to again and again and again. And for me, the verse is, "You can do nothing without me." Because I was an idiot. I was a kid at 20. I didn't know from. I was lost. I knew that I had fun. I was good at that. But in terms of direction and, being grounded and knowing where I was going, and I really envy in a certain way people who know what they're doing from the get-go. Oh, yeah, I'm going here and going to school, finish up, blah, 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 make the money, all that kind of stuff. They kind of know as if they're playing out a script. And I envy those people somewhat. But, the great benefit in being lost is the joy of being found. And for whatever reason, in the midst of my crisis, in the midst of my being lost, I decided to steal from a hotel room a Bible, which you know where to get one if you need one, and and I happen to have been reading the 15th chapter of John's Gospel, where it says, "You can do nothing without me." And for a 28-year-old guy who was lost, that's what I needed to hear. Of course, I can't do anything without Jesus, and it just all came home to me. So that's my life first. That's why I stay connected. That's probably why I do what I do. I'm the true vine. Now, this has important Old Testament context. You know this, that even in the book of Genesis, Israel is referred to as the vine that was taken out of Egypt. I have taken the vine from Egypt and planted it in a promised land. So Israel throughout the Old Testament is referred to as a vine. Now, here's one thing I didn't know, and I came across this in my sermon resources, and maybe all of you know this, but the temple, the temple as Jesus would have known it in the first century, was magnificent. I mean, covered with gold, unbelievable. And to look at it was just, as you can imagine, it was awe-inspiring. It's like, looking at Sharp's Cathedral from the first time, like, just awesome. And on the archway, going into the main entrance of the temple, over the archway was in gold, covered in gold, a grapevine. A grapevine. The historian Josephus tells us that this vine was so big that the clusters that hung from it were the size of a human being. Jesus said, "I'm the true vine. I'm the true vine." And people, for whatever reason, had mistaken the temple for God. And it's a misunderstanding that Jesus wanted very much to clear up. And so, I'm the vine. I'm the vine. You're the branches. And then he goes into an explanation of why it's important to stay connected. Well, there's two kind of branches. Simple. There's those that bear fruit and those that don't. Now, I'll leave it to you to do the math. I'll leave it to you to do the math. But apparently, it's the job of the vine grower. Jesus said, the vine grower is the one that does the pruning. One that does the pruning. Now, it's interesting about grapevines, among other kinds of things that grow, how often they need the pruning and how dramatically. I mean, that Jesus would use that in the context of a meal in which he had just taken a chalice of wine and said, "This is my blood." How rich is that image? And how important the word abide. Matter of fact, if there were a word in the Bible that was a favorite, I'll take abide anytime. I'll take abide anytime. So I know you're asking, well, how do we do it? How do we do this? Well, a couple of minutes ago, we just did some meditation. Do that. Do that. That's how you abide. Just turn it off, shut it down, slow it off, bring it to a grinding halt and just let God. Just sit, just be there. Don't do anything. God is already. I offer this prayer at the end of our liturgy that begins, "O Christ, you are within each of us." I take that at face value. I mean, you don't have to be a Old Testament, New Testament. You don't have to be an Aramaic scholar to get that inside of you is a living Christ. And apparently wants out, wants recognition, wants remembering, wants abiding, wants a personal relationship. So that's one way. Another way of abiding is what you're doing right now. You're just here. You're inside this building. You're listening to our scriptures. You're participating as a community of believers. You're in connection. Not like the fellow that I met at the gym who's lost connection. And finally, bearing much fruit is what you get to accomplish in the world that comes from the depths of your heart, the contribution of love and peace, generosity, gratitude, all those great things that Paul talked about so often, just kind of flow forth, abiding. Abiding. You know, Henry Francis Lyte was a fascinating character in the history of the Anglican tradition. And he worked primarily in a coastal town, and he was really big on supporting fishermen whose lives were hard and dangerous. And he was very energetic. You know, he did a lot of work with building schools and libraries, established an amazing library, and you know, accumulated, they say, of his time, one of the finest libraries in England. And at the end of his life, he suffered. He had tuberculosis, and tuberculosis, as I understand it, is just kind of like not being able to breathe at all, very well for very long. And he suffered for a long time. And he wrote this hymn toward the end of his life. You know, abide with me. Fast falls the eventide. And you know, underpinning the hymn, there's this great faith and great joy. O death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory? In life and death, O Lord, abide with me. Yeah. And I'm sure that all of you have sat with people you love and have talked about your final days and how you feel about them and how they'll feel about them. Just as Jesus gathered with his friends and he said, I'm going to be going away. And you will be numb. You will be numb. But just for you, just for now, here's an image that might help. I am the true vine. You know that. You are the branches. Abide in me, and I'll be with you. Amen.
Contributions to St. Luke's Episcopal Church help to make the digital ministry and other outreach within the community possible. If it is in your heart to make a donation, St. Luke's secure PayPal link, as well as the church's mailing information, may be found in the description of this video. Thank you.